Hi, good afternoon, everybody. It's beautiful, sunny, but a bit blowy weather here on the Gold Coast. And today we're going to discuss how to create and deliver successful event fundraisers. Everybody loves an event, everybody loves a party, and most not-for-profits want to raise money. And events are a really good opportunity to raise funds. I'm delighted to have today Lyn Mitchell. And Lyn and I have been personal friends for quite some time. And the most important thing is that Lyn has a very long history in fundraising and marketing. So that's a picture of me for those of you who do not know me, and a picture of Lyn. So hello, Lyn.
Hello.
Welcome.
How are you, Dan?
Good. So for the people on the webinar, can you just give a little bit of background of your experience in fundraising and who you are, what you do, et cetera, et cetera?
Sure. I've been working in fundraising probably around 20 years, mainly in Canberra and more recently on the Gold Coast for the past 4 years. I've worked at Cancer Council, RSPCA, the Smith family and Vision Australia. Some roles I had a team working with me, although a very small team, and others where I've been just a one-man band. And I've raised, I can't even tell you how much money over the years. It would be hard to add it all up, but that's through events, direct mail campaigns, sales of merchandise, grants, and just raising profile.
Awesome. So I think we have a very well qualified person to share with us about events. And Lyn has done events for one of the organizations I'm involved with here on the Gold Coast, and we had an outstanding success with it as well. So let's go on. The first question that I'm just going to address is one of the questions that has been asked me is how much money can I raise from a fundraising event? And I think that, Lyn, you'd agree that kind of like the world's your oyster. It just depends what the event fundraiser is about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it depends on the event. Some events raise a lot of money, some you can grow over time. But yes, set a target and just go for it.
Yeah. One of the important factors that some not-for-profits and anybody wanting to raise money, whether it's through event or crowdfunding, is really knowing the net revenue of what you want to raise. Because you could raise, say, $100,000, but if it's cost you $75,000 to put the event on, you've actually only raised $25,000. So if you are going to do an event, I would suggest that you put this equation up on the wall all the time and keep looking at, I'm looking for net revenue. And that net revenue is the gross revenue, so all the takings that come in, minus the fundraising costs. And those can be the direct fundraising costs and the indirect. So your indirect costs obviously would be rent, because your organization may be paying rent anyway. But your direct costs would be those that, each participant of the event would get a t-shirt or a water bottle. So the direct cost would be based on the number of participants. Do you want to expand on that, Lyn, of your experience?
Yeah, the costs could be infrastructure if you have to build an external event like marquees and so forth, hiring a venue, props that you're going to be using, whether you need extra people, manpower. There's a whole range of costs that could be involved. Now, some of those you can get in kind, which will be on savings. But yeah, there's many costs that you have to take into consideration.
And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go into our steps to a successful fundraising event when we get budget. So the first step, determine the purpose. Lyn, tell us more about that purpose-driven event.
Sure. What is the reason for the event? Is it just warm and fuzzy? Is it to raise the profile of the event? Is it to raise money? Set a clear objective about what you want to achieve, because there's no point in putting something on, as you say, if the costs are going to outweigh the funds raised.
Awesome. What's for the fundraisers that you did? Just name a couple of purposes, couple reasons why they wanted to do an event.
The main ones I've worked on have been for fundraising plus profile. When you're looking at money coming in the door, Often it's for tied funding. People expect you to spend that money on a particular thing. Events allow you to have untied funding, so you can use the money any way that you like.
So when you say untied, that means it could just go into the general operational costs of the
administration
organization?
costs and so forth. So that's the advantage of having a fundraising event. Often grants will be tied to you purchasing a particular item. So an event allows you to just use the money as you need.
Awesome. Determining the event and the theme. There's, I've been doing events now for quite some time as well for various organizations, and there's so many events that you can run and so many themes. How do you determine it? You can Google, event fundraisers online and to get some ideas, and there's just huge. You're never going to be without ideas. How can you really hone in and determine the appropriate event and theme for your organization?
Yeah, it's quite difficult to work out what's a good fit. I mean, there's so many fund runs, as you say, and walkathons and skipathons and whatever. You need to come up with a signature event that's relevant to your organisation. For instance, with RSPCA, it's a national event, but Paws Walk. It's known and it's well received, and or is there something that's a bit unique, like a particular walk, that's, and you're using celebrities and so forth?
So a signature event would be similar to Lifeline. When we're in Canberra, you had the Lifeline Book Festival, and I noticed that when I moved up to Queensland, Brisbane has a very large Lifeline Book Festival. So it just seems that Book Fest is Lifeline's signature event.
Exactly.
that they depend on.
Yeah, absolutely. But each event, and that's a bit different, Lifeline, but say for Paws Walk, each year we decided on a different theme, and people would dress the dogs up and say, what's the theme? It's a circus theme or a party theme, and people would dress accordingly, and that would be the flavour of your marketing materials and what was happening on stage and off.
And I guess that when you change that theme, say if you have an annual event, that continues to keep the life into that event, because sometimes because there is so much competition with not-for-profit organizations using events, that to go to the same the same theme event each year, it just becomes old. So by throwing in a different twist each year, in this case, like what's the theme of people dress up, it keeps adding that variety.
Yeah, exactly. Same as something like a gala ball. You'll change the theme, therefore the table dressings will be different, and your marketing materials will be different as well.
I think there's some great tips for any organization to figure out what theme they want to have, and maybe even if it's this year's theme, what are we going to do for the next year and the following year, just to kind of plan it out a bit, especially if you are not for profit, that you have annual events in that calendar. The next one's the budget. I guess this can be as big or small as you want it, depending on how extravagant you want to go.
Exactly. You have to set out what your spend is and what you expect to receive, the incoming and outgoing. You can also beg, borrow and steal. I've done events in the past.
Is that legal?
I've done events in the past that have needed marquees. So there's local members who have small marquees you could use, or maybe there's other organisations, other non-profits that you can use some of their equipment. So it's just asking people, and everyone's happy to get their brand out there one way or another, and particularly not to feel threatened that you've got another not-for-profit at your event, if that's the case. At Paws Walk, I actually invited other rescue groups of all, Save the Orangutan and everyone was quite surprised that I did that. They paid for a store. It was at a charity rate, but we're all out to achieve the same thing, so there's no need to be intimidated. They're not going to run away with your business.
Yeah. With when we talk about expenses, what have you found from your own experience? What are some of the biggest expenses that we need to consider when we're planning out our budget for any of the events?
It was something like Paws Walk, where it's an external outside event. You've definitely got marquees to consider, and they're very expensive. Whether you've got a stage, if you're doing something outdoors, For internal events, it's got your table dressings. Again, might be marquees. It'll be the venue hire, staffing cost. If, say, you're at an external venue, you've got to pay for food and the catering and so forth. So all of that's got to be taken into consideration, whether you've got entertainers.
Yep.
That's a cost as well.
What about insurance? I'm sure that like the not-for-profits, they would have their own public liability, professional indemnity, public liability insurance. Would they have to get separate event insurance depending on the event?
No, for most of the external events, you've either got, say, the venue will cover off your liability insurance, but yeah, all the non-profits liability insurance covers, I think it's up to 20 million from memory.
And I guess with some of those external events, like if you're doing a fun run, which sometimes can be quite a very big event, that you need to take into account any special permits as well that would be of cost, or if you're going to offer liquor and alcohol and stuff.
Yeah, it was something like Paws Walk. We had to do a risk management for government and look at hiring people to do traffic control and making sure that it was all, really safe and secure.
I just had a question come in and just go out. What contingency buffer do you have when you do your budget? So I was told at one point in time to add about 15% of your expenses just in case things happen that you didn't expect. Did you put that into your budgeting planning?
No, I just knew I had no money to spend, so there was no need for contingency.
Yeah.
Here's $2.50 and go and raise an event that raises $200,000.
Yeah. So I guess if you're very clear and you've had a lot of experience, what's there. Probably if it's your first one, it's almost better to say, look, if it's going to cost us $55,000, maybe I should think that it may cost us $60,000. When we talk about sponsors later on, right?
Yeah.
And as part of that budget, many organizations look at sponsors to give them some cash sponsorship and to actually start covering those expenses for the event. Can you tell us that we already had a webinar about how to attract sponsors? Can you just share with us a little bit about attracting those sponsors for a particular event and how important that is?
Yeah, I'd suggest looking for business or individuals, if possible, who have a synergy with your event. So Paws Walk, maybe there's a pet food company out there, they might be happy to sponsor, or dog washing, something like that. If you've had previous sponsors or people who are ongoing sponsors, ask them to come along and sponsor this as an additional one. Maybe there's talent that you're going to have, entertainers, they might give it in kind, or they might sponsor a particular part as well with using props or and promoting them. So they're going to be increasing their opportunities for getting gigs and so forth.
And I guess you could even draw some of your sponsors from your existing list that you have within the organization, not so much the bigger players that are in the community, because they probably get hit upon so many times to sponsor an event.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a big amount, like $500 is, it's all money in the bank.
Yeah, I guess.
What's in it for them? Are they getting their logo on the collateral, on the website? Are you promoting them in media?
Yeah. And when you go back to the website, I mean, if you even just got 100 people to give you $500, that's by calculation $50,000. That's pretty good. That'll help you out with an event.
Absolutely,
for sure. Planning. There's a lot to plan, I guess, once again, depending on the extent of it. So if you have an outdoor event like Paws Walk, that's quite a big one. But if you have just your own little school fete in the gymnasium, during, say, on the north side, above the equator, it's Christmas time, but below the equator, it would be outside. But if you have an indoor event, it may not be as extensive. So tell us a little bit about planning of what needs to be involved.
That's the biggest thing. You've got to plan the event. I use an old-fashioned Gantt chart. It's helped me out to be on time, if not ready for the event 2 weeks out of the time. you map out your tasks and set a timeline. So what has to happen by a certain time, and then I put that in my calendar, and I live and die by my diary. But you don't miss out on any timelines. When do you start promoting? When do you get the media involved? When do you start buying any props that you need? And you just list absolutely everything, right down to the Million Paws Walk, poo bags. We had to make sure that we had poo bags. So
that makes sense
too. We had poo police who
wow.
volunteers who made sure that everyone picked up their poop. Most dog owners were quite good, but there's the odd one that
yeah.
So every single thing that you can think of, and get someone else to have a look at your plan and say, have I got absolutely everything? Because you can forget something.
You obviously have to be a very organized person.
Absolutely, and I am terribly organized.
Which is a good thing, especially by being involved in events. Can you tell us a little bit about logistics? So where does that fit in? Like, you can plan it and you can have your whole list, but how do you manage, say, something like a Million Paws Walk that has a number of moving parts, and that could actually be a logistical nightmare?
It is. It can be. I guess I've just done it so many times. I remember that when I first went to RSPCA and I was told ahead of time that I'd be managing this event, and I hadn't done an event of that nature before. So my first year was a learning curve, but I still managed to get everything on time. But it is, events are logistical nightmares. Something will go wrong, and everything can. At one stage, one year, Million Paws Walk, they decided to repair the bridges where the 5K walk was going from one bridge to the other, and they were shutting them down. And I just thought, how am I going to deal with this?
Yeah.
Like, we don't have where we're going to, our venue is right in the middle of this, and the walk. In the end, on a prayer, it all came together, and it wasn't an issue on the day. I also had government double booked that event, so I had to work out with the other person who accidentally was double booked where will we situate each other, and we came to a compromise on that.
Yeah.
So power won't work. There's lots of things that can and will go wrong. You just have to remain calm, like a duck on the water. It's all going on downstairs, but you're gliding upstairs.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the things that you probably touched with when you're looking at all those things that can go wrong, that would come out in your risk management plan of, if it's going to rain,
Yep.
or if high winds, or, part of the venue's blocked, or the venue's double booked, that you really have to look at, not being a pessimist, but look at all the things that could possibly go a little bit off color, and make sure that you have a remedy for that.
Yeah, and what's your contingency plan, and set that out in a level on your risk management from, say, 1 to 5.
How far do you plan out for an event? And once again, understanding that would depend. Like, we're having Commonwealth Games up here, and we're planning, in a sense, almost 6 years out for that. A normal event for any not-for-profit, what would be the lead time for them needing to plan for the event?
For something like a gala ball or Million Paws Walk or a marathon type thing, for me, I start planning the minute that one event finishes. So for Million Paws Walk, the minute it finished, I booked the venue again for the following year. Yeah. Start planning a year, but it depends. If it's a smaller event, it might be only 6 months, but I like to get mine a year. Yeah. And as you say, if it was something like a marathon, it's probably even longer.
Yeah. And also, if you've done that event before or not. If you haven't done that event before, you might need a little bit more lead time just to figure out what needs to be done to actually pull that event off. Fantastic. So the resources, we talked about a lot of different parts within an event. What resources do we need to look at? Obviously, we've talked about financial.
Yeah.
You mentioned about people and volunteers. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yep. Do you need, is staff going to be involved? Can you draw on them? I've worked at some events where staff are not allowed to be involved, so you're just on your own. Do you need to recruit volunteers? Do you have a database of volunteers, or do you need to go to an external agency that can provide you with volunteers? Yes, we talked about money. What sort of equipment do you need? And who's going to be responsible for everything? I've worked in events. I'm the bottom line, but managing something like Million Paws Walk where you needed 500 volunteers, that's a lot of organising.
Yeah.
So can you have someone who's a team leader of the volunteers? It might be one of your volunteers or it might be a staff member, and that makes it easier.
Fantastic. So I guess once again, when we're looking at the resources that you need, is really creating that whole list of everything. And then, and with Excel and various databases, everything makes it a lot easier. And going, well, here's the resource that we need to take care of X, and just making sure that there's a name to the resource, or even where to attract that resource from or get that resource.
Exactly. Same as equipment and anything that you need, where is it going to come from?
And that would also include making sure that your suppliers are on board, because the last thing you want is for your suppliers to run out of stuff, especially during peak holiday times or peak event times.
Exactly. And that's, again, going back to the planning and touching base with those people very early on in the event.
Yeah. So the next thing, we're looking at the promotion. So now you got the planning and everything. Now you need to figure out how you're going to get the people coming to your event, especially if it's a first-time one. If you have a legacy event like Million Paws Walk or Lifeline, sometimes you have to close the doors because there's too many coming in. But your first event's always a nerve-wracking one that you've never done before, I'm sure.
Yeah. If you've had a previous event, then first point of call is to your past participants, whether that be email or contacting them by phone. Media, if you've got good media connections, that's great. Social media, your current partners, promote to them and to their people in their workplace. Community groups, so your Lions Club and those type of places, and schools and government groups, anything you can do, and obviously on your website. So you've just got to keep pushing away at it. People leave things to the last moment, which is for an organised person like me, it's very frustrating. I don't like last minute. So I hold my breath until I've got the numbers in. Some will register on the day for your event.
Yeah, how do you manage that when people go, well, I'll just wait till the last minute or rock up?
Yeah, you have to have a cut-off date where you're just not going to take any more online, especially for, say, a gala ball or something. You can't. The caterers need to know sort of at least a week to 10 days out. Do
early bird registrations work?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Offering a cheaper price, a lot of people will get on board early to take advantage of that. For something like Million Paws Walk, they could register online prior to the event and on the day, so that's fine because you don't care how many come along extras on the day. But for something catered, that makes it difficult. You just push everywhere you can to try and get it. And if you can get media coverage, something in the newspaper, something on the radio, then that's invaluable.
And I did a webinar previously on social media, and I think that's one of the things too, is finding out who your target market is, going back to the planning of it, and then finding out how best they want to be contacted throughout various social media channels. Obviously, the most popular one is Facebook. If it's a corporate event, though, it might be Facebook and LinkedIn. So I think you really need to encapsulate all the various social media platforms, then determine which one you may put them, quote unquote, put the money into if you're going to use paid media.
Sure. And you try and avoid paying for any media. There's also the old-fashioned letterbox drop that doesn't hurt as well.
Yeah, awesome. And because sometimes, depending on your market, they might not be very knowledgeable in social media, especially if you're targeting an older market as well. Fantastic. So after we get all it done, probably the execution goes before evaluation. You promoted it, you've executed the event, and now the evaluation. What do we need to evaluate after we've done the event?
You need to get feedback from the participants of how satisfied they were in the event, whether that's by afterwards sending them out emails or contact, or on the day going around and just randomly surveying people. Just get a general feel of the day. Are people enjoying themselves, letting their hair down? And, you get a good feel. What can we correct on? For something like Million Paws Walk, I literally spent the whole day running around, troubleshooting and so forth, but also talking to the stall holders. Are you happy with how you've, what your patronage has been today, and are you happy with how we set you up? That's important because they're going to come back, and Stallholders go to a lot of events. They won't come back if they're not happy. So you need to make sure that you've said, are you okay? Is there anything else I can do? Just talking to the crowd and getting a feel for the event.
Yeah, fantastic. And there's so many online tools today now that you can send out. SurveyMonkey, I found the response rate to those aren't very high unless you're going to be giving something away for that to encourage them. Now we have 2 case studies before we finish up. So Lyn's been referencing the RSPCA ACT Million Paws Walk. So tell us a little bit about this case study, what you wanted to share around it.
Okay, well, when I first went to RSPCA and was responsible for Million Paws Walk, and just to be clear on, for those people who are not familiar with Canberra, Canberra's a satellite city. So there's a centre and then lots of little suburbs that radiate out from there. And when I went there, it was at one of the satellite cities. So with discussion with my CEO, we decided to move it to the city central so that everyone would access it, because Canberrans don't tend to move outside of their usual place of going. So we moved it to a central place. That afforded us a stage and a great venue to set up stalls and do the walk, and opportunity to build on. It's actually where Floriade is held. So I had entertainers because we had a stage. I made it look professional. Previously, they had probably about 3,000 people attend and had raised about 30,000. The marquees and things didn't look professional. There was not really an entertainer. It just looked unprofessional. So don't ever ask a party girl to hold a party, because I had a party. So we contacted the first one was the Governor-General to see if he would cut the ribbon for us. So that was a great media profile. So that's straight away a buy-in. I contacted the local DJs who were popular and said, would they be Master of Ceremonies? They agreed. So again, more media coverage. We had lots of entertainers. I had the circus, I can't think of the name, the kids who did circus tricks. We had singers. We had fashion parades where the dogs dressed up. And I just continued to think up really mad ideas about what could we do to make this a whole day where the family could come out, bring a picnic lunch, or have something from one of the stall holders and just spend the whole day. And I ended up getting it to the stage where I had to ask people to leave because we were packing down and going. They're still enjoying the party.
So it sounds like the Million Paws Walk, by the time you had your input on it, it almost became that it wasn't about the walk. It was really a day of family entertainment, family celebration, and the Million Paws Walk, or the dogs, were the trigger of that. It was just one event in a multitude of events that became part of that major event, it sounds like.
Exactly. You didn't have to have a dog to go along there. In fact, we had cats walking, llamas walking, anything, birds. But it was just a good fun day out, and government wanted to be on their event calendar, so that was a bonus. But
awesome.
On leaving there, when I said I started, it was raising 30,000, and on leaving, it was raising 250,000.
That's awesome. That's very, very awesome. Now you have another case study you want to talk about, Government House Canberra.
Yeah, again.
What is Government House Canberra? If we have anybody who's not from Australia and overseas, what's so significant about Government House?
Government House is opened, I think it's twice a year, but one in particular where locals or any visitors can get a chance to tour through the house, have a look at the house, and then we also put on a little bit of entertainment. Again, when I went there, it was not as well attended, not much entertainment. I had 54 hectares to play with. And
every event manager's nightmare or dream, depending on where your mindset is.
Yeah, party girl, party. And Dunrussell Drive, I think itself, the road leading to Government House, is about 5 kilometres. The first year, I'll start with the 54 hectares. So I had the symphony orchestra on stage. I had other orchestras on a different stage. So I had 2 stages where entertainment was going on at any given time. I had the Red Berets landing. I had hot air balloon.
Jeez.
I had a car display, stall holders, activity for kids, roaming entertainment.
That sounds like logistical nightmare for me.
Again, it comes back to the planning.
Yeah.
So, and running around 54 hectares, I was obviously fit for the day. The logistics, the risk management was difficult because we had the Governor-General open the event. And it was at that time where there were scares, bomb scares. So they've got their security. I just needed to liaise with them. But setting it up was definitely challenging. But again, we had, by the time I finished that event, we had people lining up right down Dunrossell Drive to go through the tour of the place. So the following year, I thought, okay, I better keep these people in the queue entertained. So that's why I came up with the idea of roaming entertainment and having remote speakers so that they actually felt as though they were part of the event. And we had hundreds of volunteers who helped out with setting up the event, taking it down, and managing the tours through the house.
It's amazing. Well, Canberra definitely lost an asset in the Party Girl and also various events. So amazing case studies that Lyn has shared with us. Now, look, here's just a few event fundraising ideas. This is not even scratching the surface of it. Various themed charity balls, golf and tennis events, gourmet barbecues, household art auctions and sale, silent auctions, dance events, fun runs, walks. There's so many. And as I said, if you kind of have a creative block, just Google event fundraising ideas and you're going to come out with pages and pages and pages upon events. The challenge is going to be finding, like Lyn said earlier, that one event that really is aligned with your purpose, and not only the purpose of the event and what you're trying to fundraise for, but the event and the values of the objectives and values of your actual organization. Is there anything else you want to add, Lyn?
No, have fun. That's the main thing. Let's stay positive and have loads of fun with it.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you, everybody, on being on this webinar. And if you want to know any more about fundraising or business, go to wiseacademy.edu, which is the educational arm, and also ipledge.com, which is our crowdfunding platform as well. Thanks again, and have a great day.